Welcome to the 30/30 Health Podcast. The following discussion is for education and entertainment. It is not intended to diagnose or treat disease. Please do not apply any of this information without first discussing it with your doctor. Here is your host, Guillermo Ruiz.
Hello everyone and welcome to the podcast. Today's guest is Keith Norris. Keith is one of those few lucky guys who has been able to completely transition out of corporate America and dived headlong into his passion for bettering lives by teaching the art and science of physical culture. Keith is also one of the leading figures in the exploding paleo nutrition and health movement. His tireless work promoting paleo principles is what allowed him to reach out to paleo celebrities like Robb and Mark Sisson to put together the #1 paleo conference in the world. Anyone who has attended PaleoF can quickly see from the lines of athletes, peers, and wide-eyed newbies that line up to speak to Keith that he is truly on the pulse of new exciting developments in the fitness field. The very essence of PaleoF is rooted in the idea of putting theory to practice, an idea that Keith is heavily invested in. I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and remember, visit my website, that's 3030strong.com, and if you really like this podcast, please leave me a review on iTunes. Thank you. So hello guys, I'm here with Keith Norris and he is crazy enough to give me an interview. So Keith, how are you?
Oh dude, I am a lot crazier than that if you only knew. Oh, I'm doing awesome. I am doing awesome. It's another beautiful sunny day here in Austin, Texas.
Oh, beautiful Austin. I had the honor of meeting you, back in 2014 when I just first started medical school. It was my second quarter or semester at medical school. And I was at PaleoF 14, and I asked Sean Croxton, what pearl can you give me for this crazy profession that I'm going into, naturopathic medicine? And he told me, don't be a broke-ass naturopath. and that lit a fire on me. And then I was trying to meet as many people as I could. And I got a chance to talk to you. And you immediately started grabbing people like some of my heroes, and introducing me to them because you're so open to this movement. How did you get started in this paleo movement?
Yeah, and I would say it is a movement now. It is a full-fledged train that's really disrupting the way healthcare is thought about in this country, and I'm happy to play whatever small part I can in that.
Well, now you're doing that was an understatement, but yeah, how did you get started with this?
Well, it was it started with a conversation with Robb and Art Devaney, actually way back in the early days of the internet, just when we were starting to feel out this new communication mode, which makes me sound old as hell because the internet is so ubiquitous now. But back in '97-ish, it wasn't a household thing.
You couldn't go to your In-N-Out or Chipotle and order something protein style back then.
Right. I mean, it was a totally different landscape. And yeah, I just kind of came into this whole movement more from the sports and performance side of things. And having been in the sports and performance, I knew that diet played a big part, and body composition. Obviously, we knew way back in the day, and I say way back in the day, back in the 60s and 70s, that higher carbohydrate diets would put fat on you. I mean, it was just known that if you needed to put on fat, for instance, if we look at an extreme and look at sumo wrestlers, if you look at their diet, the lay public would think that they eat a lot of fat, which is totally not true. They eat a large volume of carbohydrates.
And beer.
Yeah. Anything that drives insulin up and fat storage up, that's what they do. So conversely, if you start lowering carbohydrate, adding fat, adding protein in lieu of the carbohydrate, magically fat begins to melt off.
And beer is a very funny phenomenon, because we know about sucrose. And sucrose is your table sugar, which is one molecule of glucose and one molecule of fructose combined. It's two sugars, combined. Mm-hmm. But then you get to maltose. And it's called maltose because from the malting process, and that's two glucose molecules together. And now you start thinking about maltose and the people that are drinking a lot of beer, mm-hmm. and you start getting that beer belly.
Yeah.
And that's two glucoses. So if you want to spike your sugar, if you want to have a high glucose content in your blood, there's nothing better than beer.
Oh yeah, no, it's a superfood for putting on fat. It really is, and this is coming from a person who loves beer.
I was going to ask you.
I really enjoy beer, but again, it's all moderation, and I would say too that you have to. Not everybody is created equal. I mean, I have a very, very low percentage of body fat and a high percentage of muscle mass, and so I can get away with an occasional beer. When I'm working with clients who are not that way, I tell them, you know what, you're going to have to put away the beer till we get your body composition right. And if your health means that much to you, you'll give it up, at least for the short term.
At least for the short term, and that's it.
The short term, yeah.
And that's the thing about about this movement, like we're talking about. It's this fad that's been going around for thousands and thousands of years. That this is something that is very what's at this moment in your health. Are you healthy enough to have a beer every other weekend? Yep. And some people will not. But as you progress through your health, you eventually will get to a normalcy where you might be able to enjoy a beer or two with your, but you at least know the consequences of this beer.
Absolutely. And I'm probably more on the philosophical end of things than I am the science end. I certainly appreciate the science, don't get me wrong, but I am at heart more of a philosopher. And, my philosophy is that life is meant to be lived. And now we want to do that in a healthy state because that puts us in a better position to be able to do what we want to do. It allows us to be our true selves. And in being our true selves, we can then go out and affect the world in a positive manner and, bring whatever inherent gifts we have to the world. But we can't do that from a state of poor health. So it's my belief that you need to dial in your health first, but that doesn't mean that you have to be an abstinent monk afterwards.
And again, there are no sacred cows within your paleo lifestyle. And I'm saying your paleo as anyone's paleo lifestyle.
Yes.
There are things that we're going to have barriers to health, and we're going to have, that things that maybe you shouldn't eat, but within the right context, there are no rules.
No, it's not at all. And I think that's one thing that makes this, the paleo movement so powerful is because it's not a hard and fast set of rules that everybody has to follow. It's a template, and everybody manipulates that template as need be. So, and the flip side of that is it requires of the participants of this movement to be involved intellectually.
And that's frustrating for some people that want some clear rules.
Yeah, it is, but it makes the movement stronger because those in the movement are precisely those who are A, free thinkers, B, critical thinkers, and if we want to get into this, they're epistemocrats. Yeah. I mean, they question their own preconceived notions more so than anybody else. So when you get a group of people together, and you've seen this at PaleoFX, I mean, that is 5,000 free, critical, and epistemocratic thinkers all in one group. And it raises the intellectual level exponentially when you're at that show.
Okay, for those of you, for those of people, I imagine most of the people who are going to listen to this recording are not very familiar with the paleo movement. They're more familiar with the naturopathic movement. And I'm trying to merge the two because it only makes sense. Tell me about PaleoFX and what's your involvement with PaleoFX?
Yeah, well, I'm a co-owner and a founder of PaleoFX.
So you created.
I'm a little bit biased, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit biased. but yeah, so from the layperson's perspective, when they hear the word paleo, they think diet.
Yeah.
Okay, that's yes, diet does play a part of this, and that really was the impetus for the creation of PaleoFX. I mean, it was essentially a diet-centered movement, a diet-centered convention, as it were. All the movers and shakers within paleo at that time were specifically looking at diet. Now, there was some fringe people who started to bring in, and this is probably my contribution to it, started to bring in strength and conditioning into this. Well, if we look at this whole thing from an evolutionary perspective, it's always been my theory or my thought that we as human beings were obligate movers first and opportunistic eaters second.
Yeah. Wow. That is powerful.
And it's very, very true. If you look at the crucible under which we evolved, we had to move. I mean, we had to seek shelter. We had to avoid predation. We had to hunt. That meant moving every day. There was not the ability to sit around and chill out. I mean, that wasn't available. If you had a big kill, yeah, you could probably chill out for a while and eat off of a big kill for a while. But for the most part, and if we look at this from a weekly, yearly perspective, there was a lot of movement, punctuated with some very high intensity sprinting, lifting, dragging, and such as that. So,
and then you bring people like Darrell Edwards, and
yes.
and then all of a sudden this diet movement completely follows and embraces people like Darrell Edwards, people like Erwin LeCour, all these people that are talking the same language you're talking right now.
Yeah, and and diverse people, right? So you can look at Darrell and Erwan, and the parkour type movement is one extreme. Then you bring in the movement people, and the yoga aspect of this is movement and the ability for the body to move through a full range of motion and many ranges of motion. Is that important? Obviously, it's important. And then you bring in more of my perspective, which is strength and conditioning for more power-oriented sports. Is that important? It's certainly important, but none of those are important in a silo. I mean, it's the whole big package, and then expand it out into the diet, because in the diet is the underpinning for performance. So now you have the diet and exercise both put together, and that enlarges the group even larger. But then you bring in, okay, well, I mean, if we study the human condition, there's obviously a spiritual element to this as well.
Oh my goodness. Are you reading my mind? I was going to say right now that I've been to a couple of PaleoFXs, and the one thing that really just clicked with me, it's probably the reason I got into botanical medicine, was Daniel Vitalis.
Yeah, totally.
And the shamanism talks and all of those fringe, pseudo-fringe, because it's part of who we are.
It is part, yeah.
They go hand in hand with this, again, diet. It's not just a diet, it's movement, it's spiritual, it's just this complete package. But can you tell me a little bit about Daniel?
Yeah, so I mean, Daniel kind of epitomizes that pillar of the movement, right? So you have the spiritual element, you have the botanical, which could then we could dial that in a little bit further and call that the homeopathic route. These are broad silos, right? So the broad silo of diet, the broad silo of strength and conditioning and movement, and the broad silo of we'll call it spirituality, shamanism, homeopathic routes. And that's important too. I mean, I don't want to dive too far down this rabbit hole, because it's a show in and of itself. But one only need to look at cave paintings to understand that spirituality was a huge part of our ancestors, the crucible under which they evolved. There's something there. And I'm not speaking about religion per se. Religion is a reflection of how this has turned out, but it doesn't have to be formalized religion. For some people it is. For people like myself, it's not. It's more of a spiritual bent, but it's very important to our whole being and what makes us a whole person.
Now, when did you realize that all of these things had to come together? How did you sit with your wife, Michelle, and we're like, okay, we need to put in this convention?
It went back to 2011. In 2011, the Ancestral Health Society had their first gathering. I spoke at that. Michelle and I flew out to LA for that event. And it was a fantastic, fantastic event, but it was very, very academic. And long story short, we had a fantastic time at that show. This was the first time many of these people in this sphere had met each other face to face. So it was fantastic from that point of view. There was of course, it was a scientific leaning convention, and so there was a lot of science put out. But Michelle and I were talking. In fact, we were sitting on the tarmac at LAX, waiting to take off and fly back to Austin, and we're kind of reflecting on what all went on. And we said that we just went on and on about what a cool symposium that was, but for the average person, they wouldn't have gotten much out of it because it was so academic.
Yeah.
And we just said, well, what would it look like to put on a show that was more theory to practice, that was more rubber hits the road, so that the average person could really incorporate this idea into their day-to-day lives. Because we both at that time, and I still train clients.
Yeah.
And I know in training clients, they expect me to know the science. They expect me to know the background, but all they want to know is, what do I eat today? How do I move today? What they want, those types of questions.
Yeah, it's like, your car breaks down, you take it to the mechanic. You might know that it needs an oil change, and you might know the basic things that you have to do to your car to keep it in working condition, change the tires.
Yeah.
But you don't care how a carburetor works.
Yeah, that's exactly the analogy.
Within the paleo community, we do geek out in all of these things, and I know, because I have been to AHS and I have been to PaleoFX, and I know that our people are a little bit more educated than the average caveman, and they understand a little bit more. But still, sometimes we take it to this fringe in vitro studies, and sometimes we just need the practical, the theory to practice to make those changes in your life.
Yeah, and I think, for my part in PaleoFX, I consider myself at least intelligent enough to understand the science, but I've always been the application guy. And in my view, even the very, very fringe science is interesting, but if it's not applicable, then it really doesn't do anything for me. Because I'm always the application guy. How can I put this to work in the day-to-day? How can I help a client with this? How can I help myself with this? So for me, it's got to be applicable, or I have to be able to translate it as such. I've always had an eye towards that direction.
Like, for example, Dr. Ruscio talks about this a lot, like 23andMe. Okay, so you can get your genome, you can get every single, polymorphism that you have in your body, But if your water, eating, and exercise are not on point, that is just, crumbs. You gotta start at the base.
You're, at that point, you're majoring in minors.
Yes.
You have to major in the majors, and people tend to dive down the rabbit hole first and try to fix the minor stuff. And really, I tell people, hey, it all starts with just basically eating correctly, moving every day, drinking water, pure water, all the basics, getting your sleep. I know it sounds boring. I know it sounds like it doesn't do much, but that's where the 80% lays. That is the big prime movers of this. If you want to dial down a rabbit hole, you can do that, but you better have the basics covered first.
Or you're just going to waste your money.
Or you're just spinning your wheels.
I call this the Arnold effect. Just imagine Arnold at the, Gold's Gym, doing curls to find symmetry within his biceps. And then this little chubby guy comes up along and says, hey, Arnold, what are you doing? oh, I'm doing curls. So then this kid thinks that by doing curls, he can look like Arnold. When
Absolutely.
Arnold has been squatting, he has been eating protein shakes, every 3 hours. He has been doing all of these different things to get to that place.
Oh, that's
And
totally
yeah.
it. And you see this in the strength and conditioning realms all the time, where people come in and they want to do the stuff that looks cool, the stuff that's edgy. And what you never see on YouTube is just the clips of somebody in a gym doing 5 sets of 5 squats. Why?
Unless it's you or Ripito.
Why? Because it's boring. I mean, who would ever watch that? I mean, it's just, okay, another set of squats. But in reality, that's the 20% that's going to get you 80% of the results.
And there were reports that Russell Wilson was being woken up every 20 minutes while he was nursing an injury by his PT. And I can see high schoolers reading this and getting injured and then asking their parents to wake them up every 20 minutes. And that would just destroy them.
Yeah. Everything is in context, right?
Yeah. This guy lives for football, and he's probably doing an off-season training schedule, and he probably has fantastic meals, and it's just in context. Now, okay, so what do you do for your health? Because recently you posted a couple of pictures in Mexico. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this was Michelle had mercury fillings. So Michelle and I came of age when mercury was used for fillings. Yeah. And obviously in the last several years, it's come to light that mercury is not so good when it's floating around in the floating around in the human body. So we were looking around for places for her to have these fillings removed, and it's not so easy as just going in and changing fillings. I mean, as soon as you drill into that stuff, it's released into the body, and now you've got a worse problem than having the filling was to begin with. Long story short, that's extremely expensive in the U.S. if you can find a dentist who is willing to do that. Yeah, and many dentists right now just haven't bought into the mercury being a bad idea mindset. So if you do find those dentists, they're very, very expensive. We have a good friend, a geneticist here in Austin, by the way, who I work with. He's a fantastic guy, a polymath. Anyway, that's a whole other subject. He had been to Tijuana, and he had said, "Hey, I know this clinic down there. They are totally on the up and up, and you can get this dental work." And for Michelle, it was pretty extensive. She didn't have just mercury fillings; she had some other work she needed done. Long story short, he said you can get all that work done in Tijuana, a very, very credible clinic down there, and for about 20% of what you're going to pay here in the U.S.
Wow.
We checked the place out. Yeah, they were on the up and up. We flew into San Diego, drove into Tijuana, and she had the work done down there. But while she was having that work done, Mexico's kind of if you want alternative medicines, Mexico's the place to go. Just because they are way more liberal in their approach to healthcare than the U.S. is. Well, there's lots of reasons for that, but that's the end of the story. Is that they're just much more liberal in their approach. And I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Oh no, simple as there is a cash-based system. If there's actual competition within practitioners.
Yes, totally. I mean, the whole. And that's probably a subject for another show.
Completely.
Just to backtrack for just a second, is another aspect of the PaleoFX movement, and the Paleo movement is the disruption of the status quo within politics, healthcare, culture within the U.S. I would say sustainability is another silo. Getting back to our trip to Tijuana, fabulous care. The clinic was. The people working the clinic were highly, highly educated. The clinic was well run administratively. And they have an a la carte menu for just about any alternative treatment you want. I mean, if you're willing to pay for it and you've done your homework and you agree that that's what you need for your health, they're more than happy to oblige.
Wow. Now, what did you get done?
So I had blood ozone treatments done while I was there, which, people would hear that and kind of go, "Oh my God, that sounds horrible," when in fact it's extremely safe. It's documented to work, and what ozone does is it essentially kills pathogens that may be lurking within your body. You ozonate the blood,
and then
expose
you auto-hemolyze it.
Yes, and you draw a volume of blood, which is roughly a half pint. They expose that to ozone and put it right back in the system. And I did this for 3 days straight. The actual treatment itself takes maybe 15 minutes, just long enough for the practitioner to draw the blood, expose it to ozone, and then re-inject it into the body. Now, the reason I did that was, I'm getting back to the geneticist I'm working with and looking at blood work. My insulin levels vis-a-vis my diet, which is pretty close to being a ketogenic diet, my insulin levels indicate that there's some kind of an underlying infection going on.
Like a subclinical infection that cannot be detected.
Yes, subclinical infection can't be detected, but my insulin levels vis-a-vis my diet, and for how long my diet has been that way, would indicate that there's an infection going on. What that infection is, who knows?
Yeah. And it doesn't matter.
And it doesn't matter. Yeah, it really doesn't matter. So, so went and had the ozone treatments done, come back, follow up blood work, and miraculously the insulin levels are back in line to what you would expect for someone on a ketogenic diet. So now, could I have done that in the U.S.? Maybe. Generally, it would have to be underground. Because this is just not a treatment that's recognized in the American medical system.
Well, and I came to this profession, to the naturopathic profession. I used to work at a hospital, and I was like, I need something different. I need to actually heal people, and by removing whatever the obstacle to health. Not to say that modern medicine is not amazing. It's amazing when it comes to surgeries and trauma care.
Yep. Absolutely.
But yeah, at my school, we do different treatments with nutrient IVs, and I am in contact with doctors that are doing ozone injections through IRBs, review boards. So if you are ever in Phoenix, I will treat you to an ozone injection with one of my mentors. Yeah,
very, very good.
Yeah, so as a student right now, I can go to all of these conferences, and learn all of these things that maybe practitioners, because they're so busy with this huge lists of people that are going to see the practitioner for a antibiotic for a viral infection, which doesn't work, and they're so overwhelmed that they can't continue educating themselves. And they don't have time to go look at this other therapies that could be so beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. And we call this is another part of
another silo.
It's another silo, but we recognize that doctors are good people who are just trapped in a crappy situation, in a crappy system. It's not that doctors themselves, maybe some of them have bought wholesale into the system. That's true. But many of them are just caught in a system that they don't agree with themselves. And you're right. They're just inundated. If you look at the daily life of a doctor, he or she just doesn't have time to explore other avenues. It's just, there's so many hours in a day. There's just so much time.
And some rabbit holes are going to lead you to nothingness.
Yes. Yeah.
So absolutely. You have to discern as a practitioner what's worth it and what's not. So now, Keith, I know that PaleoF is right around the corner.
It is.
And first of all, if someone wants to see previous PaleoFX recordings, how can they do this?
Yeah, so wow, you caught me off guard with the website address. You go to www.paleofx.com and you look under the Watch tab. You'll be able to sign up for a Netflix-like service that
Which
we have.
Is brilliant.
And we have videos going back to year one of PaleoFX. Eventually, we will have every talk and every panel that has ever been at any PaleoFX up on that site. Right now, we're able to upload, I want to say like 3 a week, roughly 3 a week, but there's already a good amount of videos on there, and it covers the spectrum. Yeah. And when we get back to the silo idea of what PaleoFX is, I mean, anything and everything from spirituality, strength and conditioning, diet, sustainability, everything is covered. And we're talking about the movers and shakers in this movement. The Robb Wolfs, the Dallas and Melissa Hartwigs, all of these people are represented
Mark
there.
Sisson, Nom Paleo, Michelle Tam, you name it, they're there.
Yeah, everybody, very, very forward-thinking people. Dr. Perlmutter was at the last PaleoFX. His video will be up there. It may or may not be up there right now. I don't know if his video has been uploaded, but if it's not, it will be. But people of that stature, it's just a repository of anything you can think of that falls under health and wellness and forward-thinking health and wellness.
Okay, and then now for the next PaleoFX, are there any previews or any surprises that you can give us?
Well, I can tell you that it will be bigger and better. It's an event that has grown so fast and so furious. It is just about all we can do to keep reins on it and have it grow in a good way. That is to say that the interest, the people who want to speak are the highest caliber you can imagine. The vendors that want to come in are of the highest quality you can imagine.
You can spend, the whole conference on at the floor, just learning from all the people that are there, that are supporting the movement, and that's not minimizing the effect, because those talks are just such high caliber and groundbreaking.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And you've been to the conference, and that's a massive conference center that we hold the event at, and we've outgrown that.
Yeah.
So now we're looking to, we're going to have to turn this into a multiple venue event, much like South by Southwest that goes on here in Austin, and we intend to be the South by Southwest of health and wellness, as we grow. But we want the growth to be meaningful. In other words, we don't want to grow just to grow. So it's going to be a slow and controlled growth, but it is growing, and we are right on the cusp. Whether it will be the next iteration or the one following, we're going to have to move into multiple venues just to be able to accommodate.
And for example, you had in this past conference, you had people grappling with jits. There was people deadlifting, and there was talks on philosophy and spirituality, and at the same time they were teaching how to sacrifice a chicken. The gamut, of everything that you need to know to be a healthier person was covered.
Yeah, and I would say, if you're looking for trends, one of the biggest trends coming down the pike, and we stay abreast of all the trends, obviously, because we have to reflect that within the PaleoFX show, but hunting is a huge trend right now.
Oh.
And you can see why. I mean, people, I guess it's been a reflection of the sustainability movement.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and environmental sustainability too.
It's the overlap of environmentalism and sustainability. And hunting is a huge part of that. Controlled hunting obviously controls the herds. It's it takes the place of natural predation, which may or may not be in existence anymore for some of these animals. Deer, for example, there's huge populations of deer here in Texas that are, and the reason it's so huge is because the natural predation has been limited. So that predation now has to turn to hunters.
And hogs and javelina.
Yes, yes, exactly. And so that is fantastic meat. It's very, very healthy, and it's, and now it's a sport, and now you can turn your sport into something that's actually good for the environment and good for you. So hunting is a big, it's a trend that is taking off, and so I'm sure that we will have some talks on hunting, if not workshops.
Wow, that sounds so amazing. And I can, and I can imagine, like in the future, you'll probably have at the same time you're having this hunting seminars or talks, you will have a petting zoo where kids can go see what they're eating, because you gotta have that respect.
Yes.
And it's, it's the respect that the hunters have for their prey.
Yes.
Like, for example, bass fishing. If you ever see another fisherman, in a catch and release pond not releasing, you will go and report them, because the respect that hunters have for their prey, it's so great. It's this relationship that is beyond what people understand. People just see the killing and they stop at that.
Yeah, sure. It's, those in the paleo community really take the American Indian ideal of having respect for your prey. I mean, we understand, where we are in the cycle. Yeah, it's symbiotic, and we understand our relationship within that symbiotism, and we understand that as a species, we need to predate on other. If predate's a word, I think it is. I'll just say hunt. We need to hunt other species in order to survive, and that's the cycle of life. That's the cycle of life here on Earth. That then bleeds into spirituality. That then bleeds into the American Indian idea of having the utmost respect for the animal that sustains you.
Yeah, and I understand, with other types of diet philosophies, the only difference that we have with other diet philosophies is the protein source.
Yep.
And we have so much more in common than just the protein source. We want to fight the Monsantos and the big pharmas, and we're looking for health. It's not about fighting against them or trying to make a statement against them. It's about getting this critical mass in order to change the world.
It's very, very true. I talked to a vegan this weekend, in fact, and had a very, very good discussion with him. And at the end of the discussion, he was like, wow, we really do have a lot in common. I didn't realize that the paleo community felt this way about sustainability and animal husbandry. And we can still disagree on the very, 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 very end point of slaughter. But up until that point, we are united. I mean, none of us want to see CAFO operations.
No.
None of us want to see that. All of us agree that animals should be treated humanely, and they should live the lives they want to live. I think that with the proper knowledge, vegans and vegetarians would be able to realize that grazing animals in the grasslands that would be required to support grazing animals will also help to sequester a large portion of CO2. So that's in a much greater proportion than the methane gas given off by the animal. It's about a 10-to-1 ratio. And this is all proven, this is me wielding the science side of it, but this is proven by science.
And not that we're trying to convince our vegan friends to eat meat.
No.
But, investing or supporting causes like Joel Salatin's, like the Savory Institute,
yes,
is in the same wheelbarrow, in the same thought process as they have to save this environment.
Yes, absolutely. And so I am always open to change. I'm probably the most open person you will ever talk to. And in working with the geneticists that I've been working with, I've come to realize that there are certain maladies, there are certain periods of time where a vegetarian diet would be the best prescribed diet for an individual.
For example, if you have someone with horseshoe kidney or some kidney
Yes.
disease, maybe you need less protein.
Yes, absolutely. And so, it's in context to what a person has going on in their life and health. For the most part, we could say a paleo template works across the board, but there's always going to be those instances where, you know what, maybe protein needs to be almost completely curtailed, or animal protein, for a period of time for a person to regain their health. And I think this is also why when people go on a vegan vegetarian diet for the first year or so, they feel fabulous.
Yep.
It's not so much the vegan vegetarian diet that did it, it's the elimination of all the other crap that they had been eating. But at a certain point, they hit a tipping point where then the health issues start to arise of not having animal proteins in the diet. And I think if we can have an informed conversation about this, we both the paleo community and the vegan vegetarian community would come to see that we have a hell of a lot more in common than we have differences.
Well, Keith, and who's to say that not eating protein because you have some kidney disease is not paleo? Because what's paleo anymore? To me, what I call paleo is the most anti-inflammatory diet for you at this point in time.
Yes, totally. That's a great definition of it.
And it just sucks that the paleo name stuck. And we had these discussions at PaleoFX, with Robb and with Mark. But this is the meme that has maintained, and we are using it because everyone knows what we're talking about when we say that word.
Well, this is another silo of is. I am a political science major from way back when, and I totally buy into the idea that if I own the term, I get to define the term. And we're in the process now of defining the term. And so we keep beating this drum of sustainability, spirituality, all of these other aspects of paleo. And it's that drumbeat is starting to spill out.
Yeah.
And we'll just keep beating that drum. And, maybe the term is unfortunate. I don't know. That's yet to be seen. That can only be seen in retrospect. But to eliminate confusion, we're going to stick with it.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
We're just going to keep beating the drum and saying, no, that, the paleo community is about soul and sustainability backed by science. I mean, that's what the paleo community is about.
And it's frustrating when you hear when you say, "Oh, I eat paleo," and they'll say, "Oh, so you eat bacon and and fat all day long." Well, no, and now you have to have a 45-minute conversation about what paleo is.
Yeah.
But at least when people that have been sick and they changed to either they came through the sustainability, through the low carb community, through the all of these different communities that have converged at this paleo movement, at least we have a soft spot for that word. And we understand, and like we wink at each other because we know that we're family.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's totally, you can see this in the strength and conditioning world too, where, it's kind of the go big or go home thing, right? Well, everybody knows you can't do that. Well, not everybody knows, but those within the community, that's kind of a thing. It's like those within the community know that, if you run with that idea, go big or go home, eventually you're going to go home forever. Because you're going to break yourself.
You're going to tear labrum.
Yeah. But, that is a part of the community. And that's one of those, I don't know if it would be a rite of passage or whatever to get to the point where you understand, oh yeah, it's said in a tongue-in-cheek manner. I get it, because, to be a complete athlete, that's just the go big or go home idea is just one small little part of that. And same with the paleo community. Is it all bacon and coffee? Not really.
Not really.
Is that part of it? Yeah, it can be a part of it, but that's one of those, tongue in cheek, wink kind of things. That the insiders get to. That's the insider joke that we get to play with each other. Whether that's to the detriment or not, I don't know it, but it is, and I'm guilty of it too. I mean, I'm I'm all about my bacon and I'm all about my coffee.
Hey, I'm drinking coffee right now. Well, Keith, this has been a fascinating conversation. Tell people who are listening, how can they get a hold of you? How can they sign up to go to PaleoFX and learn the cutting edge of paleo at this moment, and any information on how to reach out to you?
Sure. If we're talking about PaleoFX, easiest thing to do is just go to www.paleofx.com, and from there you have the full spectrum of the ability to buy tickets for the upcoming event, which would be May 19th through 21st of 2017 here in lovely Austin, Texas.
And I will be there.
You will be there, absolutely. And you could probably attest to the fact that Austin in the spring is just one of the most beautiful places you'll ever want to be.
Oh, man, one of the most beautiful places, one of the best food I've ever had. It's amazing.
Yeah, Austin is a very, very, very progressive city. I love living here. I mean, it's a fantastic city. So other than PaleoFX, my personal interests kind of center around the Theory to Practice blog, and that's just how it's spelled out, just like it is, Theory to Practice.
Number 2?
It's not a number 2. It's actually
okay.
TO.
Okay.
Yeah. If you just Google Theory to Practice Keith Norris, you'll go right to it. People can drop me an email at theorytopractice@gmail.com. You can find me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
So if someone wants to train with you in Austin, how just Theory to Practice, and then they can set up the schedule with you?
Yeah, so that's another business that I'm involved in. So Efficient Exercise here in Austin, Texas, and we incorporate proprietary equipment, which is the ArxFit equipment.
Yeah,
and that's arxfit.com. You can check that out there. It's a very, very unique equipment. In fact, we're speaking with NASA about having ArxFit be part of the mission to Mars.
Wow.
So, that's sucking up some of my time too, but it's a very, very interesting pursuit. Efficientexercise.com if you're here locally in Austin.
The first Arx machine came to Scottsdale not long ago, so it's
pretty
cool.
Yeah, it's starting to spread. Yeah, we're starting to spread out, and we're happy about that. It's a fantastic piece of equipment. It's a great tool to have in the tool belt.
Well, thank you so much, Keith. This has been a fantastic interview, and I'll see you in Austin.
Guillermo, I am looking forward to it, and you keep doing the good work as well.
Thank you so much.